at HYPER Annotations 3.0 with Agustín Pérez Rubio, the curator of the Spanish Pavilion. Agustín, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and I'd like to first begin with a simple question about the Biennale, which is, how did you receive the theme Foreigners Everywhere when you first heard about it?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I would like to be a little bit picky because really I'm the curator of the Migrant Art Gallery, the Pinacoteca Migrante.
Yes.
And the Pinacoteca Migrante is, the Spanish Pavilion is hosting Pinacoteca Migrante. So of course, I'm the curator of the Spanish Pavilion, but really the one who invited me, it was Sandra Marrajeshiki, because she was the one who received the invitation. So I'm invited, and also she's my boss, so she's a kind of the director of this project, and I'm the one who, as a curator, worked together with her in order to compose the entire project. And in relation to the Biennale, it's funny because many people think that we were nominated or we won the competition after we knew about what it was about the Biennale. It was just the opposite. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who are taking care of the Spanish Pavilion, they made a competition with a jury composed by 7 different people, 2 directors of museum, curators, artists, journalists, 1 director of an art fair, whatever, and they were the ones who select 5 artists. That it was the invitation on February 2023. And in that moment, Sandra Gamarra got the invitation. We were working together many, many years. Also, she was invited by me and the group of dear colleagues for Berlin Biennale. Yes. But also later in 2021, we did a very important project, Buen Gobierno, Good Government, in one of the spaces in Madrid for the Madrid government, Sala de Alcalá. That exhibition, it was important because it was, in terms of a space, the people was looking to her work because she's a Peruvian artist born in Lima, but living in Madrid since 25 years. And always they were looking as a painter, and she's also a painter. But as an artist, as I always used to say, give ideas, space, money, resources in order to create something. And in a space, it was very important. Also very critical with her research about all of our position, how Spain was dealing with all the colonial history in relation with the Andes. But in February, she invited me to start to apply for this and to present a project about, this at the end, what is Pinacoteca Migrante, Migrant Gallery, and we won the competition on April. And Adriano Pedrosa, released his theme for the Biennale, like Foreigners Everywhere, in June, July. So we didn't know about. So that I think that the Spanish Pavilion, like many others, this year looks really, really in the same line of the ideas of the entire Biennale. But there is a slightly difference because there are a lot of ideas that Adriano put on the biennial, but always the migrant or the foreigner is someone who comes from the outside to the inside. Like, for example, these migrant people that she invited to come, yes. These different monuments from the different ex-colonies of Spain that now they are migrants in this land because we are in the land like the embassies. The pavilions, legally is the Spanish line, even if we are in Italy. But there are other pieces related to Spain that Sandra deals with the idea of the migrant inside their own country. For example, we have in the cabinet of the extinction, we have the big problem that we have now in Spain about España vaciada, the empty Spain. How much knowledge from the rural areas we are losing in terms of plants, animals, also artifacts, stories, legends that we are missing because the people from a lot of land around the capital, they want to live in the cities, in the big cities. Yes. And these important villages that they were super important during medieval times, even in the contemporary times, now they are small villages that no one lives there. There are contemporary ruins. And this is also this idea of migration, but migration, and you are a migration, but inside the country, and how are the problems that we are facing also, not only from the outsiders going to the inside.
Yes. And this migration that sort of, at the same time that it takes you to the center of the country and connects you to the wider world in a way, it also takes you completely away. It's very unrooting in that regard, right? I think that this is something that you can see throughout the exhibition. And you were talking a lot about the Pinacoteca Migrante, the project and everything, and I would like to hear from you how a little bit more about how was it working, particularly with Sandra Gamara Heshiki, and how is basically your creative process together?
Well, we had a long relation, you know, so we know each other,
Yes,
we develop other projects, that this is also very important when you are in a big biennial or in a project that you have to develop in 10 months. It was only 10 months to do the entire project in terms of production. But the idea, Melly, she is a painter and she wanted to structure this Pinacothek in the relation of the how to reframe again to using your tools, like the tools of the narration of the painting, in order to say, okay, we have the wing of landscape, we have the wing of the portrait galleries, you know, all the kings, the queens, the warriors, we have the still lifes. But on the other hand, also we wanted to subvert inside the paintings, that it was interesting, but on the other hand, to create this counter-narrative that is this museum. What other institutionality we can to create? The ways that we produce are very different because she has a lot of research base. She is a person who read a lot, who research a lot, but also her partner, Antoine Jonquers, he works with her in terms of the research, and I was also putting my entire research of this, because as you see, her paintings also have not only the images and the iconography, also text.
Yes.
So there is a lot of reading that later you see here some of the books. You know, when you arrive here, some of these books are the ones, and later other ones. So in that way, she is very generous in terms of the curatorial. For me, she's very generous because I learned from her, but I put my knowledge and my experience of her. So she's always very open to listen and to understand. So for example, there is only one painting in the entire, it's just an example to understand the way of walking. We have only one painting in the entire project that it was made before. That is the painting about the Frank Hals family, portrait of the family that is in Thyssen-Bornemisza Museum in Madrid. This painting, on top of it, there is the text, the manifesto of Kandinsky, by white on white, in order to subvert this notion of the racist point of view where the black guy you don't see in the nature, you know, the servant. So I said to her, why we don't do another, you know, in order to acknowledge him as a hero. So she was open and she was doing this. In our research, you know, we were digging in many sources, and we contact also, you know, the research. We had the opportunity to listen and to have the research of Rijksmuseum that they did last year in relation to Frank Hals. So now, like 5 months before this opening, finally, due to the work of Rijksmuseum, we know who is this family. This guy, the man, it's the father. He was the director, the general director of the Fortress del Mira in Ghana. So he was a slave trader. So the young guy was a slave who came to the Netherlands in order to be a slave, a servant. So what this knowledge and this importance later that I shared and we shared with Sandra says, okay, so we are gonna have him not only with this small blanket, with this gold and silver blanket that usually we put with the people, with the immigrant people when arrive to the coast of Spain, because they come from Africa, not only to be cute and to hug this and to embrace them with this, also we have to give back his sound culture, because the guy is in the painting is wearing like the typical servant dress that the people was, you know, dressing in that time. Yes. And she put the kente textile. The kente is the typical men clothes that also some women's that in the Ghana they have. So this is the one. On the other hand, for example, when we have the entire Pinacothek, the entire portraits gallery, I said, Sandra, we have amazing. We have the unrepresented Chichimecas, we unrepresented indigenous, the unrepresented Afro-descendant, but Also, the very derogatory, because sometimes the Spaniards, we are this hegemonic point of view about the people from North Africa. It's only about the workers, like Filipinos or people from the North Africa. But they said, I'm missing other type of reality. As he was, what are you referring to? Said, like the trans bodies, because in the history, even in the pre-colonial times, in South America or Central America, like for example in Oaxaca, we have the example of the muches. Men born that later they act as a woman and they dress as a woman. Even nowadays, there are famous artists like Lucas Avendaño. He's a muche nowadays. And this is a tradition that comes from the pre-colonial times, but we couldn't find in the entire paintings and graves. There are not in Spain collections any traces about the history of the genealogy of the dissident bodies on Earth. So she said, let's create it. But I'm not a trans person, even I feel I'm defined as a queer body. Sandra is a mixed race, but we asked for a duo, El Palomar, for example, Rafa exactly as a friend. We work with them in Berlin Biennale. They were El Palomar, they are a trans duo from Barcelona. And she created this body between the Filipino man and the Moche woman. Also, she put the two masks, and we showed to them in order, like, we don't want to create something that is not, no, Agustín and Sandra, this is perfect. And also, Sandra add this found text that I found by Paul Preciado, that also is very strong in this Biennale, because it's about the trans body, but also the body as a colony, and also in relation with Palestine. And it was for us very important to understand that all the problems related to Palestine is also about colonization. Even in some people doesn't want to listen and they think that we are anti-Semitic. This is not true. One thing is one thing and the other is to defend the freedom, the liberty and the fire and to seize the fire now for all these children and people that they are dying nowadays. So this is more or less how we were working a lot in relation with trying, but the most important is like we did a deep research in the entire heritage artworks that exist nowadays in Spain. And here is just the opposite. She invited the ones who we didn't know who they are even. They were the ones who fight against the Spaniards. But in our books of education, no one knows who is in Spain, Micaela Bastida, neither Juan Arzú, neither Lapu Lapu. They don't know. And on the other hand, they are part of our history, even if it was to the link, but also is the idea to embrace all this knowledge, all these bodies that also now are the migrant bodies in relation with the diversity that Spain it is. As Sandra, that she's the first migrant body, the first migrant artist who were participating in this Biennale after 1 century of white people born in Spain.
Yeah, this actually brings me a little bit to my next question, and it's interesting what you're saying because I do have the feeling that it is an exhibition that pulls. It pulls things.
Yeah.
It grabs you, and it grabs also like different perspectives, and it tries to really like cohere all of them into this space. And about this, but this space is a charged space because it is charged with past representations of Spain as well. And I mean, all of the pavilions have to deal with this, right? Because you have to deal with the nation and you have to do with what you're doing. How do you see that?
Yeah, because for example, you said that it's dealing about the past, but one of the things of the pavilion is talking about the present.
Yes.
These plants, they are invasive plants. Were coming from before, but now they are our ecosystem. Even if we call invasors plants, invasive plants. And also if you see the paintings, she's not referring only to the bodegones or still life in the past. She put images from museums in Spain right now. It's the same like these paintings of the landscape. She's talking about Potosí, about extractivism, about this incredible villa of Potosí where the Spaniards, we were extracting silver during 1 century. But on top of this, she also put the image of the Atacama Desert full of clothes, of our clothes nowadays. Is a huge garbage. Also the south of Spain with a lot of plastic due to this extension garden of Europe where we eat all of the fruits and things that they are, but we are killing our ecosystem. So in that way, it's not true. She used the tools about the past in order to talk about the present. And here is this coherence is because She's bringing the past and these people, but in order to talk about the reality of how is the society nowadays, no?
Yes.
I think it's more about this notion. I don't remember what other things you were talking about, the last question.
How would you relate to
the nation.
the history of the
You know,
pavilion?
the nice
and
thing
the
is like
representation
one of the
Spain?
most important is like legally, when you enter to the door of this pavilion, you are entering this land is legally Spain. You are in Italy, but you are not anymore. It's like an embassy. It's like, that's why Julian Assange could be in, you know, he was during many years in, you know, no one can enter legally. It's under the rule of Spain. So we were very conscious that when we wanted to do the notion just to reverse, that you were a trap with the idea that you are in Spain, but later when you arrive, it looks like it's telling to you the history of Spain, but later she's doing the scope to the global point of view, to Brazil, to what is happening in Philippines, what is happening in Bolivia, what is happening in Guadeloupe. So it's the idea of how reverberate and amplified the terrible effects by the colonization in different countries, in different societies, even nowadays, in the relation with Spain. But really, it's all of the time like a close-up, and it's like a zoom to go to something really specific and something very global that it doesn't matter even if it's not, it's Philippines and it's not, but it could be other ones. It's North of Africa, that it could be South Africa too, you know, because I think that the nice thing about the project is like everyone that even doesn't know the history about Spain or the ex-colonies could be represented because the colonization.
And they may relate to it.
To
Yes, I
relate.
just saw a book in Portuguese there.
Of course,
and,
you saw the
it's
Zumbidos Andares, no?
Yes.
That in Salvador do Bahia, that is Portuguese,
yes.
you know?
And I wanted to ask you something more specific. I mean, your curatorial practice has been has had to do with decolonization for a while, and
It's a word that more and more I don't feel comfortable,
yes,
but
that's what I want to ask you about actually, because we are talking about decoloniality, and decolonization has become almost this buzzword like in the art world and everything, and it has also been something that you have engaged with in one way or the other, critically, and in particular something that also relates to your participation on the 2020 Berlin Biennale. And I would like to know, how do you see first the relevance of continuing, I don't know if the word decolonial or not, it still makes sense to you, and also the repetition of this gesture, and if I may ask even like one more thing, what has changed for you, perhaps from if we're talking here about the Berlin Biennale and...
So it's not about us, it's about how this can amplify the real sense in the society. How this pavilion now, I just talked with the Secretary of Culture of the Cultural Ministry in Spain, and we think now for the first time, you know, it's openly talk in Spain. Spain during many years, they didn't want it to see and to listen anything about, you know, the colonization, because they know the story, but this is the proof that we don't know the story. So we would like that with these gestures now, for the next years, the books that the people study, they will include this knowledge. The museums include a narrative incorporated. We want to include also protocols in the public administration in terms of racism, in terms of, you know, how to deal with not only the colonial in terms of the objects, because we have to decolonize our minds, our bodies, our ways of looking, and our protocols and laws. This is the most important. So how we can change from the art as a tool to create, of course, enjoy, but also a way, a political tool in order really to change the society, not only to create our endogamical world. This is how affects really the public opinion. You don't know how many TV programs, radio programs are nowadays in the general radio broadcast and the TV talking about these issues now. Because before it was a conversation between intellectuals, researchers, academics in Spain. It was not on the table. It was not. But these type of things are very important because constitute a symbolic capital in order that the next generation, it's like to plantar una semilla, like to put the seed in a ground. You want to flourish. Maybe I don't will see, but this is something that in the future, but the nice thing is like we are seeing even how you can move things even in your cultural environment.
But I do have a question for you, because you were talking about this emptying of the term decolonial and everything.
Yeah.
And how do you see that? Because for me, it seems that on the one hand, it has become in the art world like a sort of a aesthetic trend that kind of signals something.
Yeah.
So how do you see that movement?
No,
And
I think that more and more we have, I don't like the word, because it's like everybody not use decolonial for every single thing. You know, like sometimes when they talk restitution is coloniality.
where's the specificity of it to you?
Yeah, no, for me, I think that we have to be more specific in the way, like, it's like I don't avoid the term, but it's like we have every time to talk, because, for example, there was a huge scandal or, an opinion in Spain when the Ministry of Culture talked like now is the moment to decolonize our museums. The people thought that he was talking only about restitution. No, this is the last thing. Restitution about objects to give back. We'll see, how is we're gonna do. But before of that, we have to change many things, many protocols, many ways of hanging our collection, many research that we don't know where we have. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Also, so every single word means something. Restitution also, you can restitute, give it back, but we can restitute. I think that we are restituting the honor and to give and to forgive also to these cultures.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So means everything. So we have to be more specific in the way that we have to. The umbrella is decoloniality, but we have to be very specific in every act, in
What's
every
the political
chapter.
demand in a way?
And decoloniality, it's like feminism. It's not a storytelling, it's an action. You are not feminist if you say, oh, I'm doing this exhibition about women's. No, darling. How many women's you buy in your museum? How many money you put in where your budget goes? This is the same. Decoloniality is not to represent this, where you put the money. Who is the one? Take out, put on the side your privilege in order that someone, Afro, Black, whatever, who was not represented, even from your own culture, like Roman or whatever, it's now on your position, and you are, of course, there, and you help with them. But this is important. There are actions, not only words or representation. And this is the same, like all the movement is an action and it's a social thing. It's not only a way of represent, it's also where the laws are changing, the budgets are going, how many people, for example, because that is what we talk about some Spanish museums. They did exhibitions with the faces of Black people. How many Black people or even Moroccan are working in your museum?
So you're talking about decoloniality not as a theme per se, as an action.
As an action. Of course, that later we have to represent or to make or to invite, because if no one invited, this is the way, that these people is here in terms of a painting. But later is how this can change things really in the structural way in our ways of working.
One thing,
Finally.
about I'd like to know, did anything change in your approach since the Berlin Biennale 2020 or not?
Many things have changed, this is an ongoing.
What do you think is the main learning that you had in terms of working with decoloniality, perhaps?
I don't know, there are so many, I don't remember. The knowledge is, amplifier, and also the nicest thing, is like at the beginning when you talk about decoloniality is like from different aspects, but for me decoloniality, it's also in relation with climate change, that it was but with feminism, with the patriarchy, so all of the oppressions comes from the same hegemonic matrix, and they are not only separate. And this is something that you experiment. The scientific, the racism, the patriarchy, the political, the coloniality on Palestine, they are all together. This is, the matrix is very similar. Yes. And I think that this is an important learning. Like, we have to be aware that in every of our gestures later imply other things,
Yes.
And of course, Berlin Biennale was a big, also to share with my dear colleagues, Lisette, Maria, who also Maria is writing a text for us about this migrant garden, and Renata Cerveto. But also, I think like every time more and more, we are facing, this way of intertwining the knowledges and intertwining also the battles.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting.
This is very interesting.
I see the form of what you're saying. So you larger scope, but
Yeah.
more pointed action. That's really nice. Last question, Agustín.
I have to leave.
Yeah, I want to know what some highlights from the Biennale that you saw that really made you excited.
You
if
know,
you had time to
I
saw it.
didn't see anything. I was here 1 month living. I only saw the U.S. Pavilion, that is great, from Jeffrey Gibson, some sculptures, because it was almost ready when we arrived, and I didn't see. I'm starting now after 1 month because I couldn't. That's why I'm gonna start.
What do you look forward to?
So of course, you know, many of the pavilions, you know, like of course Australia, that everybody told me that it's amazing, and also there are many people put on this relation, you know, about the genealogies of other things, but and of course the main exhibition of Adriana I want to see, because I think that there are a lot of knowledge about South America and the modernities from the global South, and and many participation. The Chola Poblete I love, and she won one of the, and many other pavilions, you know, the Dutch pavilion, or you know, even the UK from Jonacrovan. I would love to see, because I didn't see. I had no time.
Yes, Agustín, thank you so much for your time, and
Thank
I
you
hope
very
you get to
much.
see everything, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you
so
very much for coming and to have this interview. Thank
Yes.
you.